All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to take just a couple beats here to just let a few folks cascade in, and then we'll get right underway. I hope everybody's off to a good morning, and wherever you may be joining us from. It's a little bit rainy where I am,
Mhm.
but I'm looking forward to the weekend, and it's been a great small business week, and I'm really excited about today's session, and it's going to be a great wrap-up session. So. Thank you, everyone, to joining. Let's get underway. I'm very excited to welcome you to the 2025 Small Business Week Summit. And as I said, our last session entitled "From Everyday Action to Big Change: Putting Purpose to Work in Small Business." I'm Alex McMillan. I'm the interim CEO of the BC Chamber of Commerce, and I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're broadcasting this conversation from the unceded and traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I also want to acknowledge that many folks are joining from different territories throughout the province, and it's a great honor to both work and live and raise my family here. As the largest business organization in the province, representing over 80 chambers of commerce and boards of trade, and collectively 32,000 businesses of every size and from every sector and every region of British Columbia, the BC Chamber of Commerce has an unrivaled reach into all corners of this province and a deep understanding of what business needs. And it's that reach that has allowed us to curate the content for this year's Small Business Week Summit. Content that we hope has inspired you, maybe stretched your mind, given you some confidence or new tools. And I expect the same will be what you will get out of today's session. As always, events like this are not possible without the generous support of our partners. And it's a reminder of the leadership that we enjoy in this province and we shouldn't take for granted. And so I would like to thank the 2025 Small Business Week Summit sponsors. Our presenting sponsor is BC Hydro. Our session sponsors are Chambers Plan Employee Benefits and the Immigrant Employment Council of BC. And our community sponsor is the BCIT School of Business and Media. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank our pillar partners. Many of you who may be joining us today, these pillar partners support us year round, and we're very pleased to have them supporting us. They are the Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers, CN Rail, Enbridge, Fortis BC, LNG Canada, Prince Rupert Port Authority, RBC, Tourmaline, and the Vancouver Fraser Port Authority. So thank you all sincerely for your support today and throughout the year. All right, before I pass it over to our great panel, I just want to cover off questions. If you have questions for the panel as they come up, please use the Q&A function. That's you can find that on the bottom of your screen, little box with a question mark and Q&A. And those can be sent into here, and during the moderated Q&A session, we can look for some of those questions to answer. So, without further ado, I am pleased to welcome our moderator for today's session, Dr. Ingrid Kaiser Mitchell, Associate Professor in Marketing at Royal Roads University. And she's joined by our panelists, Liz Macbeth, CEO and President of Armor Valve, Richard Cowenhoven, President and CEO of Hemlock Printers, and Sandra Phillips, CEO of Modo. Ingrid, Richard, Liz, and Sandra, thank you for joining us on the virtual stage today. We're excited to have you here. And over to you.
Mhm. Thank you so much, Alex, for setting that stage and for introducing our panelists so nicely this morning. So yes, a warm welcome, everyone. I'm pleased to join you today from Royal Roads University, located on the traditional lands of the Lekwungen-speaking people, the Songhees and the Esquimalt First Nations. So at Royal Roads, we work with students and learners across Canada and internationally, leaders and change makers across sectors who are seeking to create a positive impact in their organizations and also beyond within their communities. In the last 2 years, we've been working on a really exciting project enabled by a SHIRK partnership and great Engage grant that we got. accelerating social impact, how social purpose businesses are influencing systems change. And we've had the great opportunity to do this in collaboration with the Canadian Purpose Economy Project, CPEP, and the chair, Coro Strandberg, an expert on social purpose in Canada and also globally. And the thought leadership of Coro, and very much thanks to CPEP's resources and practitioners network, has really enabled us to do this research and helped us to shape the direction and deepening our understanding of how our social purpose businesses working with others to advance on their social purpose goals. And in our research, we spoke to 14 Canadian social purpose businesses. 3 of them are here this morning with us and going to share their stories. And we also did 24 interviews with social purpose thought leaders in Canada and also internationally. And our work really builds on CPIP's ongoing work to mobilize knowledge, strengthen purpose networks, and develop shared tools and implementation roadmaps that really intending to, again, advance the social purpose economy and help businesses put purpose into practice. A report is forthcoming. And in the meantime, we would like you to see here, we got a little QR code for you to scan. So you'll find some resources that are in support of this morning's session. And also you can access all the amazing resources that the Canadian Purpose Economy Project has put together and curated. So what is a social purpose business? It's not just about values and community giving. It's something much more deeper than that. The Canadian Purpose Economy Project and also the BC Chambers of Commerce has some excellent resources for you to dive in if you want to learn more about the foundational pieces about social purpose business. The British Academy defines a social purpose business as a business that exists to solve the problems of people and planet profitably and not profiting from causing those problems. And the social purpose economy builds on this definition and also draws in some other thought leaders' perspective into their own definition. And we see this addition of, again, it's the company's optimal strategic contribution to the long-term well-being of all. And we really see, and I love this quote here from one of our case study interviews, that really a social purpose company harnesses its entire enterprise to achieve that ambition. It's not about having a do-good department or a do-good role within the company, but it really is something that we all own and advance across every aspect of our operation. And these social purpose businesses exist within the broader purpose economy, which the Canadian Purpose Economy Project defines as an economy that really is powered by the pursuit of long-term well-being, right? Again, to foster this equitable, flourishing, and resilient future. So again, it's not about profit maximization purely, it's about, again, purpose maximization. And within this economy, the businesses are really, when you're pursuing those aspirational higher purpose goals, they can only really be achieved through collaboration externally. So that could be with stakeholders such as your suppliers, your customers, community partners, but also industry peers, researchers, policymakers. And really, we're seeing that social purpose economy in Canada are growing, with hundreds of businesses are signing up and developing their own purpose statement. And it's a very thriving and really exciting to see this happening in Canada today. So why does this matter for SMEs? Well, many of you that are here today, small businesses, you really are the backbone of Canada's economy, and so hold an enormous potential to shape a more purpose-led economy. And we're seeing across Canada, and our panelists this morning are truly a testament to this, seeing how small businesses are really helping to redefine the role of business in being a force for good and social and environmental good. We're seeing many business benefits as well from embracing purpose, from engaging employees in our stories that we've talked to. Purpose businesses in Canada, it attracts and retains customers, it improves customer engagement, and again, builds those more meaningful relationships with your stakeholders. Future-proofs the business, which I know will be near and dear to many of your hearts as smaller family businesses. So again, ensuring that legacy and ownership that it continues in the future. And starting small matters. So being small can be to your advantage. You can be nimble, you can be creative, you can try things and you can pilot. And again, so this is very important for SMEs in Canada today, and there's lots of potential. So in our research, what did we find in some of our research? So we learned lots of things, and let me share a few key highlights that are relevant for this morning and our panel discussion. So businesses of all sizes are really emerging as these ecosystem actors. So what do we mean by this? So again, purpose-driven companies of any size, but also in particular small business, are really expanding their role beyond their direct operations. They are becoming mobilizers, connectors, enablers, and innovators. So as mobilizers, what do they do? What do they do? They share what they know. They share research, they share data, they share practical tools, and open source their learning to help others advance on shared social purpose goals. They are connectors. They bring people together within and across sectors, nonprofits, governments, other businesses, competitors, right? Build those relationships and build trust to tackle some of these shared societal challenges. They are enablers. They help build standards. They join, they're powerful within their industry associations, look to create new standards, policies, and norms that again create those conditions for others to also act. They are innovators, piloting, testing new technologies, looking for new approaches, new business models, again, demonstrating truly what is possible. And the visionary leaders that we have here with us today are really exemplifying this. Another key finding, of course, and we knew this coming into the work as well, the collaboration was key, but ultimately what we've been finding it is a core strategy for advancing on your social purpose. And yes, these social purpose businesses are looking to initially look internally and getting their purpose house in order, but ultimately working with others to amplify their impact is a core strategy. And it's something they're doing at the various stages of their social purpose journey. So this business case, of course, building on that, there's a clear business case for collaborating that is emerging. And especially this is for smaller businesses who, have resource and capacity constraints and can't achieve some of these visionary social purpose goals completely on their own. So again, tapping into network, unlocking innovation, there's lots of shared learning, building credibility collectively. And so then addressing some of those capacity concerns. That is a real reality for many of these small businesses. Collaboration amplifies small action as well. So what we're seeing is that purpose-led businesses often begin with small, tangible initiative, like pilots or local collaborations, and those over time then begin to expand as trust is gained and you gain broader influence within your industry. So again, starting small is possible, and it also can lead to greater change further down. Collaborations happens both within and beyond the value chain, and we will hear that this morning through the stories of our panelists. And many of these social purpose businesses starting off maybe smaller with their suppliers and their customer, but then again expand and look for other opportunities, maybe to work with nonprofits and again build government relationships and even work with competitors that Sandra from Modo is going to share with us a little bit later on as well. Internal alignment is very key. It really enables that clarity internally, which then also helps with your external work and building those relationships externally with partners. So clarity of purpose, visible leadership commitment, and then engaged employees, all of those things really help us and equip us to work with others more effectively. Because again, it builds that clarity. We then have better clarity around who might we collaborate with, who should we be looking into within our community to partner with. So those are just a snapshot of some of the findings that we have wanted to highlight for you to set the stage for our conversation. We have for those of you who maybe joined a little bit later, wanted to again draw your attention to the QR code here. You can access some of the resources that supports our session this morning. So without further ado, I would like to jump straight into the stories from our panelists, because that's really what we're here today to hear your stories, and they're truly inspiring. So I'm going to stop sharing here and bring you all back into the fold. So we have Sandra from Modo and Richard, right, from Hemlock, and Liz from Armor Valve. And so what does some of all of this look like in practice? So I would love for each of you to briefly introduce your company and share your social purpose, your reason for being, and how it's reflected in your leadership, because we really heard that over and over again, that the leadership commitment is so key. And maybe in your words, if you could tell us a little bit of how you as a leader make that purpose, your social purpose, visible internally within your organization to build that engagement and to build that alignment that we know is so key as you look outwards and begin to engage and work with stakeholders to advance on your social purpose. So Richard, let's start with you.
Thank you. So good morning, everyone. If you're out west, still morning. My name is Richard Cowanhoven, I'm the president at Hemlock Printers. So we're a printing company based in Burnaby, but we work with clients all across North America. We ship into the US and service a wide range of clients. You can see our beautiful products behind me here. Just to start off with Hemlock's social purpose, our purpose is to create connections, build community, and inspire actions that safeguard the health of the world's forests. And it's only a few words, but it did take quite a while to get to that place. Some soul searching and a number of meetings with the team. And just to talk about the purpose a little bit, I think at the heart of it, it really reflects the values of our company. And I think that's really important, that it should speak to sort of the foundational values of the business. And at the heart of it for us, we're a very community-minded organization. And that's really not just about working with the community. It's about the mindset we have in the sort of origin of the business and how the business has developed over decades. We have a lot of long-term employees. It's a family business. I'm second generation. We have a number of employees here that have been here 30, 40 years. So it's a real community feel here. And beyond that, with our suppliers, we really rely on a close collaboration with our suppliers, many of whom we've worked with for decades as well. And then on the external side, our customer relationships are also built over many years. It's very much a trust and relationship business, a lot of custom solutions and how we kind of adapt our service for the changing needs of customers. And we have a lot of examples there. So really our business is collaborative by nature in terms of how we've evolved. And so that's a really good foundation for us to build on. So when we came up with our social purpose, this concept of creating connections, both internal and external, building community, which is that foundation, and then how do we use that foundation to inspire actions, in a direction that we want to go, or inspire actions to make an impact on the areas that we feel are important. And so we landed, of course, being in the printing business, we use a lot of paper and there's a lot of opportunity there. So we really connected with the issue of the health of the world's forests, forest ecosystems, climate, that whole topic there, obviously massive. And really for us to take that on, collaboration is obviously essential. So we really feel good about that. Every time I see it, I think, yeah, that's exactly it. It does feel a little bit, how do we connect to that broader global issue? But I do feel very good about it. And I know that it's resonated with the staff. And just in terms of embedding it into day to day, it's little things like having it on display in the facility. We have a newsletter where we have frequent articles that we talk about our environmental work, our customer engagement work. So it's once you sort of have that foundation, it's all about the little things that you're doing to build on it. And there's a long way to go for us, for sure, on that front. One thing I can say is on the social purpose work that we did survey the staff around how they identify with the business, what are they proud of in the business, and sustainability came through very strong, more so than I even had expected. So we know for a fact that that's a point of pride for the staff. So that just gives us that sort of validation to kind of go, yeah, this is the right thing we're doing here. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Richard. And Liz.
Okay, I sort of have a very similar origin story to Richard's in that I am generation 2 in a family business, Armor Valve, and we defined our purpose in 2022, so we're still fairly new in this journey. Our purpose is we exist to transform infrastructure for a healthy, thriving planet. And it's not just a side initiative. In a very short amount of time, we've been able to embed it deeply into our operations, and it serves as a decision lens and a strategic lens. Um, uh, we also believe it's a source of strategic advantage for us and a way to future-proof our business by helping us create long-term value for people and planet. So my role as CEO and president is to really drive this process forward. And it's very similar to managing a change process. For example, we started off the first time we measured our employee engagement with 14% of our staff who were not at all engaged with the purpose. And the second time we measured that same KPI, we managed to reduce that to 0%, not at all engaged in the purpose. And so the other role that I have is, in addition to driving the process forward, is the long-term planning. And for us, we have completed our theory of change. So now we have a clear view of the end goal and we're starting to fill in the steps. But just to give you a sense of perspective, our net zero target is 2040 and our purpose realized target is 2050. So I will not be working in the business when it comes time to achieve these targets. And so surprisingly, it actually feels a little bit natural planning out that far in advance because we are a family business and because we are trying to set the next generation up for success. The other thing that we've done is to commit to a quadruple bottom line business model. So essentially what that means is that we're measuring our success and establishing targets along 4 dimensions, purpose being the first one that we've really crystallized, and now focusing also on people, planet, and prosperity measures. And we report about that transparently on our website.
Thank you so much, Liz. There's so much visionary leadership in all that you just mentioned there. So thank you so much. Sandra, over to you.
Thank you. I'm Sandra Phillips. I'm the CEO of Modo. Modo has been around for 28 years. If you're from BC and you don't know what somebody at an event recently told me, the original gangster of car sharing. We share cars so people don't have to own and have the burden of ownership of a car. We are in 25 communities, and as of last week, we have passed 35,000 members. So with that said, because we're cooperative, we have another aspect, and I will talk about this. Compared to staff, partners, we also have members. Our purpose has been around, I believe, in 2018. It was before my leadership time, so it's also survived, leadership change. And we exist, or we build a sustainable and inclusive future where shared vehicles strengthen our communities. And we have embedded this throughout the organization in many different ways. Richard talked about staff, Liz, both of them talked about staff engagement. It's embedded in our staff engagement surveys. It's also embedded in our organizational KPIs. And staff gets bonus payments if we're financially sustainable and we meet our social purpose KPIs. We also use it for partnerships because if you've been around for 28 years, you get more requests than when you start out. And it's really, how do you decide who's value aligned and where you partner. So we use it in decision-making process externally. But then the third piece is for us specifically, because we have members, we also measure how engaged or how engaged our members are with the social purpose. We have an annual survey that goes out every year. And one of the questions is if this still resonates. And it does, and specifically the sustainable angle. And obviously sustainability has all three portion, you know, financial sustainability, planet and people, but also the inclusive angle is very well respected or very well appreciated, I should say. I see my job as you have to continuously reiterate, right? It's not a once and done and you never talk about it again. In fact, we're having an initiative where it's not a change of the purpose per se, it's just a tweak of the language. And we're actually moving into a rollout of we don't have that much physical space anymore because we're a remote hybrid, but the offices will have an updated, you know, we have stickers in the office or walls with stickers. But we're also, because we're a remote hybrid, we really had to figure out, okay, in 2018, everybody came into the office and saw it. So how are we going to do this time? And so we agreed that all staff will get some sort of, and I am not the marketing expert, so they'll decide what it is, but something physical again that reminds them of the new language. So I feel my job is also just to keep it at the forefront, so we don't forget and get complacent, I guess, about it.
Yes. Yes, that's a beautiful point there around like keeping it living, like it doesn't stop, right? And it doesn't stop, just as you're saying, it doesn't really stop by, you know, writing it on the wall or you know, having a plaque somewhere with your purpose statement that you have, but it really goes deeper. So let's dive a little bit into that deeper work. So again, it shows up in that everyday decision making. You all talked about that. So I was wanted to ask if we could dive into, let's explore that a little bit more in practice for you, right? It shows up in everyday decisions that begins to shape how you as businesses connect and collaborate with others. So Richard, purpose, again, right, often guides and sets the tone for how you collaborate. And you talked very much about how collaboration is written into your purpose in so many ways, right? Around creating connection, building community. So what practices at Hemlock, if we can dive a little bit deeper, help to ensure that purpose shapes and how you show up in those relationships with external stakeholders and other partners? You have to unmute yourself there, Richard.
I said some really insightful things there. No one heard it.
One more time.
Yeah. What did I say? No, I was just gonna say it's interesting when I was thinking about this question because it's the sort of our approach predates the existence of our social purpose. So it's not like because we have a social purpose, we now operate in this, or we apply these practices. And really, from my perspective, it's sort of driven from an entrepreneurship kind of perspective, right? So we've always been a very entrepreneurial business. I think in our industry, because of the technological change and the way clients use our product is changing constantly, we're always thinking about what to do next and how to position ourselves. So I think that's sort of just in the way we operate. And so, and in order to do that, we have to collaborate with basically our clients, our suppliers. We feel community opportunities. So before this, we were already operating in that mode. So I think in our particular case, it's an entrepreneurial mindset, and you know, in that vein of, okay, how do we add value? How do we evolve, right? And I think years ago, you know, more than a couple of decades ago, we knew, you know, well, going back to the 90s, probably in terms of it being even formal, we knew that being a responsible business, being a leader in that space was really part of who we were. And so that's sort of a continuation. I came into the business in the late 90s, early 2000s, and I grew up sort of with a lot of environmental concerns just from my upbringing. So that kind of just tailed right in. It's not like I was on my own on that. We had a committee in the early 2000s, and you know, and we started working with Canopy. They were called Markets Initiative at the time, and they were really active on sort of and continue to be on forest conservation and forest related issues. So in terms of Hemlock's example, so the question is like, how does it affect our day to day and how does it show up in relationships? I would say the most obvious place is at this point is our work with suppliers and particularly paper manufacturers and the companies we work with who we buy from in that supply chain. And then how do we help steer our customers towards the best products within that mix? So that's where you get into educational resources, taking that knowledge that we have, creating tools, resources to help our sales team communicate that. So that's where we're in the middle between these two places, the selling side or the bringing the product or how do we add value to the product, and then the supply chain engagement. And yeah, so I think in my case, it's definitely part of the DNA of the business. It's part of our family. So that's really it. In terms of a process, from our Hemlock example, it really started from the internal side first. So we had a committee and we started to generate a lot of ideas. That committee was formed through a third-party engagement through, at the time, CBSR. Coral also, who we know, came in and helped us with a bit of stuff. So that kind of started where we then said, hey, look at all these different things we can do operationally and with our customers. And, so it was a bunch of stuff. So that's really the starting point was internal engagement, which led to a bunch of ideas that related to supplier engagement opportunities or community partnerships, those kinds of things. And then once those supplier or community partnerships evolve into something that's more of a embedded service or embedded in your product, then you can bring it to the customer. So start internal, then you go to the next layer, your supply chain or community partners, and then you go to your customer base, but with very solid resources or tools or products that are based on that development, right? So that's kind of been our evolution. Yeah.
Thank you, Richard. So so that evolution internal, and then over time, you build that confidence, you build the educational material as well. Okay, Liz, let's look for you. So purpose is an important lens for decision making, right? And this is something that I know you're really working with, and as you just mentioned, you're developing your theory of change as well. So how has Armor Valve, briefly, if you could share with us, begun to integrate that in again to your more of the day-to-day operations, and especially how as well you engage with suppliers or key stakeholders that are relevant for your purpose journey?
Yes. So internally, we can have a great deal of influence. Externally, as a small business in the energy and industrial space, we are absolutely a small cog in a huge value chain. And that power dynamic means that our influence on customers in particular is limited. And so in deciding how we were going to live our purpose and collaborate and influence others, we had to be realistic about the resources at our disposal and who we can really collaborate with to drive change forward. So I'll start with some of the examples of how we use our purpose as a decision lens internally, and then I'll get back to the external piece. So for us, it all starts with our people. That's where we got started in human resources. We integrated purpose into our recruiting and onboarding, our job descriptions, and our performance reviews, which serve as annual check-ins to see how people are engaging with the purpose and what it means to them. It's also prominently displayed in our office, and the insight that we get from performance reviews and one-on-one conversations drives how we engage and support our team. So this year, we introduced sustainability training, and we created a Purpose 101 training that was delivered to all new employees. And then we also have kind of health and wellness initiatives, because purpose is a very effective tool for engaging, attracting, and retaining people who are aligned with the company's goals, talented people who are aligned with the company's goals. In our operations, we've shifted to sustainable packaging. We've consolidated shipments. That's helped us reduce emissions. And even our service team that does have to travel and get hands-on with the equipment sometimes have introduced remote training where they can to cut travel cost and emissions. And since we first started measuring, we've successfully reduced our energy consumption by 29%. But I wanted to underscore that that's resulted in a 26% reduction in energy costs. So the external piece. Given that we are a small cog in a huge value chain, we deliberately look for enterprises that look like us. So smaller family or responsibly owned businesses where the commitment is already there. I serve on the board of Family Enterprise Canada, and I also chair its impact initiative. And that platform in particular helps us identify allies in the space, and also it gives us a voice. And so we've focused on the family enterprise and industrial space, given that we understand some of the challenges that those businesses are facing, and we can confidently recommend that purpose can help.
Thank you, Liz. And we'll come back. We'll dive a little bit deeper into that work that you're doing with Family Enterprise Canada in a little bit. So, but Sandra, let's talk about you. So, your purpose is to build, right, the sustainable, inclusive future that you talked about, and again, shared vehicles strengthens communities and transform how we move. And how do you sort of balance the day-to-day operational needs with the longer term collaborations that advance that broader purpose and the social impact you're seeking to make? And if you would hone in a little bit, and again, on your decision-making framework, because I know this is something that you've been actively working on since you've come on board as the CEO of Modo. So yes, that balance, which is so key for smaller players. You have your operational needs and then working on those long-term collaborations to advance on your purpose.
So I'm going to give two examples of, how we're advancing. And one is, I think, very easy as an organization to support, and is the electrification effort. So Modo is on a path towards electrifying. We have 1,000 cars by the end of the year. 1 in 5 will be electric. Now, it's a huge undertaking, not necessarily, getting the cars is one thing, but not necessarily because of that, but because infrastructure is built for the personal car owner, not in a shared context. What Modo does, it actually makes it more accessible for folks who would have probably never would have the funds to be part of that, clean tech. And so it makes it equitable. So it's a very logical decision for Modo to jump on the bandwagon. And we could have decided that we're going to go full electric, and it probably would have financially broken Modo. So balancing, the long-term impact from an inclusivity and a sustainability perspective, also with the financial reality of who we are. And that's why we're moving towards it. And I can say with full confidence, because I've worked in the shared mobility space for 16 years, that Modo is actually at the forefront of the pack when it comes to electrifying existing fleets. But we're doing it in a smart way. Now, the second example is where we realized actually we have a bit of an internal struggle of how we're doing this, and we may have to add a few more decision points to how we're making decisions. We have our car sharing runs on technology, so because everything is connected. And I have the fortune to have an in-house software team, because it allows us to address, to be inclusive, to build features for new members, people that are just learning how to drive, as much as people that have been, having their license forever. It allows us to get car seats into some cars because we have families. But I'm talking through this, and you already hear how complex this is. And we have been potentially a little bit overly ambitious sometimes to try and meet all of this. And it's really hard for the team, because if you look just at the social purpose, it's like tick, tick, makes sense. We should do this. But operationally, we may not be set up to support this long term, or it just burns out my team over time because we're adding so much complexity. So what we've built is like a decision framework. It has 5 points. The very first one is the social purpose. So we'll start with that, but we do look at, like, is it simple and reusable? And do we have the internal capacity and knowledge to build this? Or do we need to bring people in to support us in this? We also look at risk reduction and resilience over time. Is this something that helps us to reduce risk long term, which then means we'll be around in 20 years still for members that need. And it's a real balance act. And the other thing we learned by doing this, we have roundhouses, we had everybody use this decision framework to just basically decide on a delivery, food delivery. How would you score it? And the difference is big, because you, Ingrid, understand one thing one way, and I understand it a different way. And working together then on figuring out, okay, you have this understanding. Why do you have this understanding? It also helps us, what I'm trying to say, it also helps us to have these conversations and then look each other in the eye and be like, this is the best path forward. Let's do this.
So that's a key point, right? Not just it gives you that clarity, right? And also making sure that you're committing in a way that you can actually realize, and you have the resource, the capacity. And as you're saying, who do we need to work with to help us to get there, right? Like all of those good things. So thank you so much. So yes, we're getting a sense of how your social purpose comes to life through some of those decision making that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And how that begins to set the stage for how you're showing up at your suppliers, right? And or where else do you need to show up in your case, Liz? Like, where else can we have our influence? So let's talk a little bit about some of this collaborative work that you're doing a little bit more in depth. So as you think of your long-term social purpose ambitions, how are you working with others to achieve them? And so, Richard, I'll start off with you again. I'm wondering if you could share, partnerships, right, and collaborations have become essential for smaller businesses to advance on their purpose goals. And so for you, could you share an ongoing initiative? And I know this has been in a few years, right, in the making that you're working on. You have an industry-wide zero carbon printing 2.0 program that brings, the idea is, right, to bring together suppliers, customers, and other partners to amplify and sort of advance on your social purpose goals. So could you talk to us about this program, because it's really innovative, and you're leveraging your own sort of assets and expertise that you have as a company, and again taking it out into the industry, taking it into that next level. So if you would talk a little bit about this collaborative work that you're doing.
Okay, caught myself that time. Yeah, so the Zero program dates back to 2008-ish, so it's been around a long time. And it's become a real foundation for our company in terms of how we engage our clients on sustainability and the sort of overall environmental impact of the sort of choices that they're making, because there's a big range of materials that we use. So it is, for us, we've created this program from scratch, and it has a high degree of momentum. It is definitely seen by others in the industry as sort of a really good example of how to bring sort of an environmental initiative at the customer level. I just do a little bit of background in terms of how it evolved, because I think it is a really good case study of collaboration. And then the 2.0 thing that you're referencing is sort of aspirational right now still for us. It's how do we take this thing we created and scale it? And it's something we've been wanting to do for a while, and it's something that is still very much on our path. This is sort of that next step, and I think we'll talk about it here, but also probably in the next question around the challenges of doing that. But in terms of how this program evolved as a case study in the collaboration side, it really started with carbon footprinting of a business, which I think, is still very much a good starting point for understanding, where your business is at. And that goes back to around 2008. We did our first footprint. We worked with Offsetters, who's now Ostrom, and they do this kind of work, and they did a carbon footprint analysis of the business. That helped us understand, okay, well, what is the product level impact? We have an operational impact, then how does that relate to a product level? And at the product level, how do different choices impact that footprint? So that just from that exercise, it allowed us to then come up with a client level program. We worked with Canopy. Environmental Paper Network would be NGOs that we worked with after that, sort of like 2009, 10-ish. And we developed a carbon calculator that is sort of built on industry standards. We worked with Offsetters to refine it and kind of help us with the mechanics of that. And that was about 15 years ago that we rolled that out, and under the brand name Zero. We've had steady adoption of this program over the years. And we've made all kinds of incremental improvements where instead of the client having to get a carbon statement for a job, it's just automatic based on the material they choose. And so it allows us to kind of start to partner with certain suppliers to make it easier for the client to just get that. We don't have to create a complicated process. We can just make it automatic. So those are all things that we've done sort of over the years. And in terms of this, how it evolved, which we wouldn't necessarily have predicted, is some of the leading paper manufacturers in North America, Domtar, Sistana, Mohawk, Nina. These are all North American-based paper manufacturers. We collaborated directly with these paper mills and developed promotional materials that were specific to hemlock. So basically, our program allowed them to promote their product in a unique way. Right. So this is basically the beginnings of a model. You start to see other clients or other printers or other areas are going to be able to do the similar thing. So this is sort of why we see now we're at a point where we see, okay, this is something that we could release to the wider industry. We're still kind of staring at that opportunity, trying to figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
And then let's dive into some of those potential sort of enabling pieces that need to come into place for you to scale that. But it's a beautiful example, right, of you working within your value chain with your suppliers, with the paper manufacturers, and building those relationships and looking for opportunities for mutual benefits and mutual value.
Yeah. And I think in the process, we're also building credibility with that supply chain, so, and there's a certain openness to how we work with them. So in that, we're creating that sort of capital within the supply chain to go, hey, these are potential future collaborators to then work with. And similar to what Liz mentioned, she's involved in the association side. I've been very involved with the Canadian Printing Industries Association. I've been the chair for about 6 years now. And that's its own thing, and figuring out how do I connect this program to that association and how to come together on that. So that's still very much there, but Hemlock we're building that capacity basically within the industry right now. So yeah, lots of opportunity there.
And that's a key word, right? Like building that credibility, building the capacity. So Sandra, many collaborations start small. Through those trusted relationships, you and I have had some conversations around that and shared pilot projects. And so would you talk a bit about, very briefly, we could talk about each of these collaborations for a whole hour. They're so interesting, but very briefly, a collaboration that Modo is involved with that began this way. And I'm thinking of your TransLink and Evo, where you're actually collaborating also with a competitor. So you want to talk briefly about that?
Sure. So while we are in 25 communities, a large portion of them are in Metro Vancouver, which TransLink is obviously the public transit body, providing services with buses and SkyTrain, etc. And one of the things we know, and this is true for all car share or shared mobility operators, our users use other modes. If you don't have a car, you start to have like a smorgasbord of different options to make sure you get around, right? You don't want to just put your eggs in one basket, or in our case, into Modo, because we may not be have a car available right at that time when you need it. So it's like a ecosystem of services, and we know this from our members. So how do you then bring them together? Because to your point, we're direct competitors with Evo, which is the other car share provider. And how do you start building trust, collaborating together? And so Modo has been part of a pilot program since, or many pilot programs, I should say, since 2018. It is initiated, or it was initiated by TransLink, which I think reduced a bit of the, I don't know if I want to be in the same room with you, because they became the facilitator. But it is a program that has brought together Modo, Evo, and Mobi, the bike share. And we have had several iterations of pilots. Public transit or public agencies like piloting to de-risk. So we had several pilots. The very first one was a very low tech. The Compass card just became an access token for all of us, and it was an employee program. So we went to employers, we had a lunch and learn, they could sign up right then, and then the cards, their Compass card, their special Compass card, gave them access to all of us. It's very low tech. There was no integration, there was no data flow. If you work anything that has technology and data flow, you know how protective people are of their data. So there was none of that, which I think allowed to build, it allowed us to build this fairly quickly. I think it was within a year this went live. It went smack through the pandemic, and the mode shift results were extraordinary. I think 60% of the participants didn't bring their car to work anymore. That's massive in our world. So that allowed us to get federal funding for a much more complex project, which is called RideLink. It's currently in pilot. It's an app that connects all of us in one. So you open the app, you see all of our vehicles, you sign up once, you have access to all of our modes. Your credit card, you just give it once. So it's wonderful. It's also wonderfully complex. But if we hadn't done this very first small pilot, low tech, we would have never gotten to the point where everybody felt comfortable sharing their data and integrating in a technical way. And to be very honest, the second one, yes, we got some federal funding on top of, all of us throwing in, but it was resource intense for all of us. So we would not have spent, I think, that amount of time to build this.
So yeah, the key word there, right now, starting small, building those relationships, building trust. It doesn't have to be, too high tech, too, worrying about some bigger, governance structures and those kind of things, but really like, okay, what are some small things then we can meaningfully come together with? So Liz, very briefly, if you are able to share with us. So you talked about, for you, you're that small cog, right, in a huge value chain, and so your spheres of influence has very much been through the networks and the associations. So Richard talked about the value chain, right? Sandra talked about, again, piloting with your competitors and TransLink. But for you, the family enterprise Canada, right, has been a key. Do you want to just talk very briefly a little bit more about that work, and how does that platform help you as a smaller business advance those conversations about purpose and begin to create that influence that I know that you're striving for? And very, very briefly, because I know we have to move on to our next piece, but a couple of high-level points for us, Liz. And your microphone.
So the conversation really centers around legacy and bridging the gap to the next generation. And values evolve over generations as well. For instance, I was not going to join our family business, and I had no intention of staying in the business when I came on board to run a project. The purpose really helps me engage deeply with the business. And that purpose may need to change when the next generation is ready to engage, because it needs to speak to their values. And so I find that is a common thread. There's a lot of complexity in family business. But if we can get that intergenerational piece right, we can be sustainable in many regards over a very extended period of time.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Liz. That's wonderful. And truly these collaborations on their own, we could really dive much deeper, and there's so much insights and lessons learned from that. So, you know, if we talk it again and kind of a bit of at a high level, but some of those enablers and success pieces for these collaborations. And from our research, we know that collaboration doesn't just happen. And I mean, Sandra talked about that already. It takes time. And Richard, this is over an extended period of time as well that you've been, you know, iterating and moving forward to the next iteration of these collaborations. So very much supported by the right conditions within inside the business and also externally, right, Liz, for you to build those conditions where you can begin to do more work. So Liz, if you look at that purpose-led collaborative work, it comes with challenges, and your business is it's a smaller business, right? What barriers have you encountered, I guess, that other smaller businesses that are listening here and are here this morning might also face, and how are you addressing them or building the capabilities to move past them? Some of the things you've already mentioned, but if you have something else to add that you think would be beneficial for our audience to hear today, this morning.
Yes, well, I mean, I think one of the constraints that we share with lots of small businesses is the resource constraint. We only have so much time, we only have so much financial capacity. And so, you know, experimenting, taking small steps forward, staying curious, course correcting, just all of those things. And also, I would say, being willing to share our story openly and transparently through reporting and opportunities like this. I find it's very powerful because the people who get it often come forward and become allies.
Right. Yes, absolutely. That's beautiful. That experimenting, staying curious, that entrepreneurial spirit that Richard talked about earlier as well, right? There's a lot of entrepreneurial thinking and in here, and the mindset that we're also seeing with the social purpose businesses that we've talked to. That curiosity, creativity, experimenting, sharing your story authentically. And Sandra, you know, again, briefly, if you were able to share from the work that you've done with RideLink and the also emerging work that you're doing with BC Transit, is really showing that, right, so more broader, higher level change happens through those collective efforts, but there also involves a lot of invisible work, right? The trust building, the patience, the partner alignment often falls as well on the visionary leaders like yourself. So could you talk a little bit about that invisible work, and you know, what makes these collaborations sort of succeed over time, especially when you're sort of have resource constraints?
So I talked about TransLink, and obviously we have a lot of Metro Vancouver vehicles, so that makes sense. But we also have a strong presence on Vancouver Island from Victoria all the way to Nanaimo and the Okanagan, and that's under BC Transit. So if we want to, we may not be able to offer the same, you know, integration, because it may also not make sense. It's a different geographical setup. But if we want to do that, we have to invest in, and I'm a very strong believer, you invest in relationship, not just projects. Especially if you think long-term, and social purpose guides you for the long-term impact. So one of the things we've done this last year is basically visit BC Transit several times in Victoria and find a way of, you know, they have their setup, and in some cases their limitations and challenges are, if it's a really small community, they can't provide another bus because they need a certain amount of people traveling. Is there a way at that point to be like, you know what, we can't do it, but maybe Modo has a van pool program, maybe that's what works. And just figuring out where could we collaborate, because we both have the same long-term goal. We want mode shift. But it takes time, and it takes, you know, getting to a pilot like RideLink, the app, which looks so great. That was 7 years in the making. or
Right.
6 years, sorry, 6 years. They went live last year. 6 years in the making. We're planting the seeds this year to hopefully do something similar with BC Transit. And it may happen next year, or it may happen in 3 years. Going back to TransLink, probably everybody in this room knows that we're in austerity mode. TransLink has the fiscal cliff story. So one of the things for our pilot ends at the end of the year. There's no funding to continue. But we all came together 2 weeks ago in a workshop and said, what can we do that doesn't require financial resources? Can we continue this collaboration in a creative way? And we have found 3 ideas, fingers crossed, one of them will manifest next year, that we all agreed doesn't need a lot of resources. Going back to Liz's comment, they're finite, right? So what I'm trying to say is, like, there's a lot of relationship work that needs to happen and relationship building. And I had this thing, I don't think you can just call up when you want something. This takes time way before you can make that call, and nobody sees that work.
And those relationship, building them over time, and it creates again those opportunities to have those conversations. As you're saying, it's kind of key what you just said there. You were coming together and collectively okay, what can we co-create together given the constraints that we're all facing? What can we do? So sort of constantly asking that questions. What more could we be doing? Okay, if that door closes, what other door can open up? And it's that mindset again that we see across all of these collaborations that you're doing, right? Even Richard, and moving over to you very quickly, you have like 30 seconds, Richard, but you know, when you look at your work, this is, as you're saying, it's many years in the making, your 0-2-point carbon printing program, and seeing it build, and you're thinking about that scaling. And as you're saying, it's aspirational. So what do you see as maybe some of those enablers that are going to help you kind of pivot to that the next step, and what are you trying to do behind the scenes to kind of get you there? You know, maybe 1 or 2 things, because we want to move forward to our Q&A.
For sure. Yeah. Well, actually, I've learned from just in this conversation, it's really helped me. So I'm going to share the insights I've learned in the last like 15 minutes. But I think the challenge we have is we try to make, everything, just try to figure out our internal first, and then we can go to external. But I think, it becomes very obvious that you're never going to get your internal, at least your concept of whatever you want to achieve done. And so the idea of working on your own program while working on, say, bigger picture collaborations simultaneously, and not knowing exactly where that goes. But I think this is probably at the heart of this event, is the collaboration helps in, the enabling piece, right? Okay, that becomes, then you jointly have an idea to work on. So I do think, in terms of like New Year's resolution for us, it's like, we should really start to push those external collaborations a little bit more intentionally, without knowing exactly where they're going to go, while we're sort of working on the internal stuff, because the external collaborations could end up helping, of course, where we end up on the internal side, right? So yeah. But just one last point on that, the goalpost, say, on carbon reporting, the goalpost for us is changing like each year. So what we were doing in 2015 is different now. So that's the hard part on the internal resourcing, to stay on top of that, because it's like the needs for us to adapt our internal practices are always pressing on us, and that becomes its own challenge.
And I think what you're saying, that the goalpost sort of keeps moving, and there's no perfect, you're not going to get your purpose house in order perfectly. Like it's constantly evolving, right? Like even Sandra, like your purpose has recently shifted a little bit, how you're articulating it, because again, you realize, okay, well, that this will be a better fit, this will work better for us, right? And so, but the collaborating and building those relationships happen at, continuously, right? And so it really very much goes hand in hand. You're advancing on internally on your purpose, and then advancing externally very much goes hand in hand, right? So let's turn to our audience. We have a few questions I'm going to ask in a couple of minutes. My wonderful colleague Meliha is going to post some of those questions. We did have 1 or 2 questions that we got when people were registering for the event. So I wanted just to pull up a couple, maybe one or two of those very quickly. So one of the things that somebody was asking was, what are some of the best practices that are emerging for sort of measuring your work and measuring the impact that you're creating, especially collectively with others? So both Sandra and Liz, you have, Liz, you have your social purpose report, the first of its kind for a smaller business like yours as well in Canada. It's truly amazing. So if anybody's looking for inspiration, go and look at Liz's social purpose report. But also, Sandra, you have a social impact report. So maybe just again, very quickly, high level, if you're able to share some thought on some of those practices for measuring your impact.
I can take that question first. And what surprised me most when I started working with my team on establishing our KPIs and writing our report is that I discovered a lot more about our purpose through the process of crafting the report. And it really, the process allowed a lot of things to kind of crystallize and fall into place. So I think it's a worthwhile exercise just to go through the thought process. We, as a family business that's been around for more than 50 years, there were a lot of things that we were already doing well, but we were not celebrating them properly because we didn't have a format, a means of celebrating them. But those things percolated to the surface as well. So the tool that we used is the Canadian Purpose Economy Project's disclosure guidelines, and then also to Richard's point, the GHG emissions reporting guidelines as well.
Thank you, Liz. And Sandra, very quickly as well about the practices for measuring impact, because again, that's it's an emerging work that we're all trying to figure out.
So we'll say I was very fortunate because my predecessor, Patrick, had established a set of KPIs to measure the organizational progress against the social purpose. And that's measured internally. And I mentioned earlier, that's used for the bonus with our staff. Now, we haven't, as I said, we have the internal staff, we have the partners, but we also have our members. And what we hadn't done is communicate this back out. We asked them in the engagement survey, but we hadn't actually communicated in a long time what, for instance, one of our key metrics is car shedding. How many of our members do not own a car or did not purchase a car because they have Modo? 71%. It's a fabulous statistic. We haven't shared this. They have done all the work, like working with research institutes on the car shedding. How do you measure that? On the like GHG emissions, how do we measure that? We actually also did with TransLink some extra work on that. So it was more like telling the story externally. And what it actually has done, it's not just for our members. It really actually, and I don't think we realized this, but it really became key for our partners. We work with municipalities on a daily basis, and having my team have something that is tangible to be like, look, we just did this year, and what we told you in 2018 is still true. In fact, we have been moving the needle every year, is really helpful for them.
Wonderful, thank you. That's very helpful insights for the audience as well. So thank you. So let's see. I would like to make sure we have some time for the questions in the audience. So Malika, do you want to pass on some of those questions for us?
Absolutely. So, Liz, we received a question for you. You mentioned the theory of change as a guiding framework. For small businesses beginning to articulate their social purpose, what's an accessible first step to start developing their own version of it without external consultancy?
Right. Well, we were fortunate to participate in a program called the Social Purpose Institute. Implementers Pro. Sorry, my dog is shaking its desk. It was very collaborative, and the program isn't running at the moment, but in defining your purpose, it's not about sort of sitting in a room thinking about the right words to put in order. It's a very collaborative, outwardly focused process where you need to bounce ideas off of people. And I think as a family business, I think my father, who founded the business, was very clear on the purpose. It's easy when you're starting, but over time, businesses become more complex, and things change. So make sure that you surround yourself with a diverse range of perspectives so you can test your ideas. You can't do this alone. You need a team around you, I think is very good advice. As the leader, you drive the process, but you need a team around you of collaborators. And don't start with a theory of change. Start with the purpose, and take small steps, and let your purpose guide the partnerships and the work that follows.
And there's some wonderful resources by BC Chambers of Commerce as well, and CPEP. And it's a very supportive community within the social purpose economy as well. So for those of you who are listening who are interested in advancing this kind of work, right, Liz, that's what you did too. You really tapped into to this purpose economy, like in attending events, and there is local initiatives here in Vancouver as well. Some very passionate purpose champions and change makers that host events and kind of webinars, and so those things I think are really tapping into that. Also helps with things like the theory of change. So you can start even if you don't have those deep pockets and big resources to commission big research projects, you can still do some of those things. Okay, and I think we have Maliha, there's another question, I think
Yes.
from Anna.
Yes. So the next question is for anyone in the panel. So if you have any advice for businesses with fewer than 10 employees, where people wear multiple hats and capacity is often maxed out, how can these very small teams meaningfully put purpose to work in their everyday operations without overextending themselves?
So it's a very real question, and I'm sure many others that are here this morning are identifying with that. So I'd love to, Sandra, I know Modo has grown, right, in capacity and over the years, but you also have experience from prior coming to Modo of working in a situation where you're small, right? So do you want to share some perspectives on that?
Sure. Before I joined Modo, I was the CEO of a very small consulting firm called Move Me in the same space. Also shared mobility, not just share cars, but generally bike share, etc. It's a very small organization. I led it for 10 years, and it started with a few people around the table. And at some point, I'm trying to think, maybe about 5 years in, I realized we're in the day-to-day forever, unless we come together and decide what's the social purpose, where do we want to go bigger picture. I had a rough idea because as a CEO, part of your job is strategy, but you got to make sure, even if you're just 10 people, that everybody's on the same page. So we actually just did a half day with somebody who has gone through the Social Purpose Institute, whole process. She came in, she kind of gave us a quick download of the pieces we needed. And then we, as I said, we spent, I think, a half day together in one room. And we actually were able to come up with the social purpose probably much quicker than a larger organization, because we were still all fitting in a boardroom. And we work every day so closely together. But it really helped move me to move from this reactionary organization to what are we actually wanting to drive. And what it also allowed us is to say no to consulting projects that we just thought didn't match. And it's hard if you're a small business because you want the opportunity, but then you're also like, it just doesn't fit, it doesn't align. So it helped us do that as well. And we kept it simple. That's all we did. The only thing that we added probably 3 years after that was we did OKRs, so annual strategic planning objectives and little goals. And we always started with the social purpose and checking if that still made sense and if our OKRs would fit that. And that was it.
Wonderful. Thanks, Sandra. Liz, do you, as a smaller business too, would, you will identify with this. Do you have anything else to add to this this question? And it was around, again, smaller companies, right, within 1 to 99 employees or less than 5 million in sort of annual gross revenue. And again, if you have any advice for some of those smaller, fewer than 10 employees, for example, on wearing multiple hats, and how can you, as a very
Yeah.
small team, begin to put that purpose into work
I
without
mean,
overextending yourself?
it starts with realistic goal setting. We discovered our purpose in 2022, and now we're sort of 3 years in. It's a change management process. It doesn't happen overnight. So be patient with yourself, take small steps forward, and make sure that you're bringing everybody along with you in a way that manages their capacity as well, would be my advice.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Maliha, do we have maybe one more question from the Q&A, and then I'll do one from our pre-registration
Great.
questions that we had.
So our next question is from Catherine. Do you invest in employees' well-being and fulfillment, helping them to identify and align their personal purpose with the company's?
Okay, that's a very good question. Richard, do you want to talk a bit about that?
Really tough one.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say there isn't any specific initiative. You're talking about individual purpose. Yeah, I mean, I think outside of we do, yeah, I don't know whether we can really describe a program. I think we try to practice a high degree of staff engagement. That's probably the main thing. And at the department level, there is definitely consideration for, exactly overall people's well-being at that level, work-life balance, all those kinds of things. In terms of them connecting to what they're passionate about with their day-to-day contributions in the company, I'd say nothing formal there other than making sure we're being very communicative with our staff and soliciting feedback from them around how we can be better, that kind of thing.
Well, it's ultimately right about kind of connecting the helping them to connect to your social purpose, right? And Sandra has some thoughts on this as well. So
you can also go with Liz. I saw her hand too.
Did you want to add something to that, Sandra?
I can. So it's a challenge. I'm going to be honest. We have a few different mechanisms. There's also a question, I think, about hiring. So one of the things is we have a culture fit interview, which is trying to figure out, we're a social purpose driven business. We have some people that have been with Modo for over 10 years, some between 10 and 2, and then some newer. How do we make sure? And the social purpose is one piece that they're checking there. So that's one. We have, again, OKRs, and one of the OKRs staff pick, one of their key results staff picks in connection to the larger objective, but they get to pick what it is. And then the last thing I would say, we have what they're called change agents, because we're 70 people now. It's hard to survey every time everyone or get everyone in a room. So from each department, we have, I think it's 12 representatives that are the change agents from staff. And we'll, if there's anything, let's say, for instance, right now we're rethinking the language of the social purpose. It goes through the change agents, so they have a voice in that and can reflect and provide feedback, and we make adjustments.
Wonderful, thank you. So I wanted to add one more question here before we begin to wrap up. One is around skill sets and competencies, and we've talked already about this mindset that is emerging in terms of as social purpose businesses are engaging externally and collaborating. But when we talk about skill sets and competencies, what might they be that smaller businesses need to enable to collaborate on their purpose? From your experiences, do you see are there specific skill sets and competencies that small businesses need to enable to collaborate on their social purpose? And we've seen through our research, we've definitely seen this as an emphasis on that sort of relational intelligence, like listening, empathy. And we've heard Sandra talk about trust building, and all of you talked about trust a lot, and patience as well, Liz was talking about. But are there other things that comes to mind in terms of skills and competencies?
Yeah, I'll just mention, following up some of the earlier questions about how small businesses can kind of take the first steps without it becoming sort of this overwhelming thing. I think connected that to your question is the business, regardless of the size, should think strategically, then think long term. And so the advice would be to incorporate social purpose or, that topic within strategy discussion. And no matter the size, to Sandra's point, get the people around the table and just go like, where are we going here, kind of thing. And then make sure you dedicate some time to what's the bigger picture, what's the deeper meaning behind what we do. I did want to mention the very, very simple framework of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. Because I found that the easiest thing to, when we started the process, they had the printouts of each SDG on a table or images related to the SDGs. So you just look at that and you scan and you go, what are the things that our business touches, or what am I really passionate about? Where do we see that we can address some of these bigger global issues within our service or within our product? And then just pull those out, and then that might inform strategy. That could then inform strategy. So you don't have to have a separate discussion on social purpose, just weave it into the strategy discussion.
Yeah, and use some of those existing frameworks that
Yeah.
exist there as a launching pad.
And I also just want to mention, we have had massive response from customers on these initiatives, and we've grown significantly in the US. Of course, that might be a bit of a challenge, but we've positioned ourselves in a very unique way in multiple markets. So I want to make the point, customers really respond to this if you do it well. And that's an important part of incorporating into strategy. How do you basically make your business more resilient? How do you improve your service? This is a really smart strategy to employ.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Sandra and Liz, as we're coming to the end. Any final advice for our audiences that are here this morning? Liz, do you want to
Yeah, the best time to get started is now. And find your community and engage in discovering your purpose. It will strengthen your business, make it more resilient, help you be creative in the right way. So yeah, the time to start is now.
Yeah, there's no waiting for the perfect moment or for the right resources to come across. Like, it's really, yes, very much starting with my existing network, with my existing relationships. What are some relationships that I can deepen? What are some of those conversations I can begin to have? What more can we do together, right? It's a very simple question, but such a powerful one. What else can we do? What else can we do together? And Sandra, what might be some sort of final thoughts around, again, linking it back to skills and competencies possibly, but also in terms of a smaller business looking to embark on this type of work and working externally with their, within their value chain, or with, looking across to associations or other networks.
It's really interesting. I would have also said, start small, just take the first step. It doesn't need to be perfect. I think the other thing is, like, just like anything else, social purpose evolves. I'm not suggesting the impact you want to have and you want to change constantly what you're standing for. That doesn't. But how you talk about it evolves, because you have different people. Liz talked about, different generations coming in. They resonate with different things. I think that's also to understand it's not a rigid framework. It's meant to guide where you're going. And acknowledging that it is a living thing, just like anything else, I think is helpful. And acknowledging also that, and in my case, I came in and my leadership team was talking about what's not working with the social purpose anymore, the way it's framed, not the actual what we're standing for, but how it's framed, what's not working anymore. And then that transparency invited collaboration across actually the entire co-op. So from, you know, my board members to the members to the staff, we did a 9 months engagement process just to get us all kind of aligned again. But we started, it was not working around it. So being open to that, to those conversations, I think also then helps you set up for success with partnerships. Because it becomes about collaboration, and just like any collaboration, sometimes they work great and sometimes there's challenges, and stick with that.
Yeah, stick with it, right? And ask how can we solve it together, right? And really looking for those shared benefits and shared opportunities to move forward together. So thank you so much to our panelists. You know, your stories are so inspirational. Like Liz was saying, that's a big part of sharing stories, of sharing what works and what doesn't work. And this is not easy work, right? But as we maintain curious, we keep going and ask ourselves, what if, trying new things and see how we can problem solve together with others to, again, advance on our social purpose. We can really make some magical things happen, as we know from the work that you are all doing. So thank you so much for joining us, Sandra, Liz, and Richard. And also thank you so much for, I'm going to pass over to Alex, who's going to do some final remarks, but wanted to say thank you to the Canadian Purpose Economy Project and Coro as well for truly making this happen, and for enabling us to share these stories. So over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Ingrid. And let me add my thanks to you, Ingrid, Richard, Sandra, and Liz for a great conversation. I learned lots. I was thinking about how, you know, over the course of the Small Business Week Summit, just the synergies in talking about, you know, the entrepreneurial spirit. Whether, you know, we talked about AI yesterday, we also had integration of inclusive hiring and how they're smart business strategies, right? And social purpose being another one. Richard talking about the entrepreneurial spirit. Also recognizing, Liz, it might have been something you said about the journey, right? And that this is a journey, and the best time, you just mentioned, right? The best time is to start now. But recognizing that it's not like all at once. There's a journey to this, and it's complex, and it may be might seem daunting, but you just need to take that first step. And Ingrid, you mentioned it a couple times. I just want to highlight it for folks on the line. At bcchamber.org. If you go into our resource and program page, there is we have a page there that we've developed in conjunction with folks around building your social purpose. So it's, you know, 5 parts virtual series that you can take that's free of charge. So go check it out if this is of interest. So thank you very much again. Before we end the session, I would like to take a moment to introduce Alex Zane, our program manager from BC Hydro, who is our presenting sponsor, to just say a few words and share some information with us here. Over to you, Alex.
Hi, thanks so much, Alex, and hello, everyone. I was able to attend 3 of the 4 sessions this week, and they were all really good. So yeah, just really great stuff all around. But yeah, honestly, what I really want to say is I would encourage everyone on the call today to check out our demand response for business program. It is a program for small, medium businesses that can really just help save some money. It's risk-free, and I would just encourage everyone to check it out, because as we all know, you are facing a lot of pressures and dealing with a lot of different things, and this could be a way to really help. Especially with costs and everything like that going up these days. So I just want to leave it there. Please check it out. I know a link will be sent out as well. And again, if you have any questions about it, please reach out to myself, and I'm more than happy to help out. So with that being said, I'll pass it back to you, Alex, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Alec. Yeah, check out the BC Hydro's, Alec mentioned it, risk-free and sort of the demand management there. Really important, obviously, as we're moving forward with more and more energy needs across our province, and small businesses contributing to that, but also an opportunity to maybe save some money. So my thanks to our speakers today, our sponsors for your generous support for Small Business Week Summit, BC Hydro, Chambers Plan Employee Benefits, the Immigrant Employment Council of BC, and BCIT's School of Business and Meeting. And with that, a little bit of sadness. That brings to a conclusion our 2025 Small Business Week Summit. I want to thank everybody for joining us, and I should also point out a big thanks to the BC Chamber team here, specifically Jennifer Jones, who's done just an awesome job in pulling this all together. Jennifer, thank you. So with that, everyone, have a great, safe day, and look forward to seeing you in the future at a future BC Chamber event. All the best, everyone. Take care.